Good evening, everybody. My name is Vince DiPietro, the local recovery coordinator for the Shoalhaven, and welcome and thank you for joining in this Facebook live stream webinar, if you like, for want of a better term, to talk about the Get Ready Shoalhaven campaign and information that we would like to get through to as many people as we possibly can to prepare for the next fire season. Now, we've been through an awful lot in the last 12 months, and the most drastic things of the last 7 or 8 months are still largely with us and complicated by COVID-19. But thanks to the technology of Facebook, and today in 2 previous sessions, the webinar that we ran across a Microsoft Teams software, we were able to reach about 150 people, and we're hoping to get that, if not more, this evening with Facebook. To begin with, could I please acknowledge the traditional people of the land on which we meet today within all parts of the Shoalhaven, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be with us online today. I also acknowledge that there is a significant impact and a lingering impact that the recent bushfires and floods have had on the Indigenous community, their well-being, culture and history within our area of Shoalhaven. We do understand exactly what damage has been done to the land and how that translates culturally to our First Nation peoples, and are very sensitive to that fact. I'd like to kick off this evening by seeking the Mayor's indulgence to formally welcome all participants and to give us her views, especially on the matter of well-being and health during this seminar for folks that may be experiencing some challenge as a result of their memories and experiences of the last year.
Thank you, Vince, for your opening words, and welcome everyone this evening to this first time that Council's tried to do a Facebook Live event. So bear with us. We've got some very skilled women in the room who are helping us out with our technical difficulties and keeping the panel on track. And who your panel are this evening, I have Ray Steins, who will be sitting to my left for Nowra Police, who acts as our liaison whenever the emergencies are on, or our local emergency operations controller. And of course, the well-known and well-loved Mark Williams from the RFS. He's no stranger to speaking on microphones, and I'm sure you do remember both gentlemen really clearly, who led us through the worst time of our lives and has continued to roll on into the 9 months that we've been experiencing that has been unprecedented. I know that word's been overused, but it's certainly been a time that we didn't expect. So in acknowledging yourselves for joining us this evening, I just want to make it really clear that if anything that's spoken about this evening drags up feelings that are not making you comfortable, to press pause. Please just press pause and move away from the screen, because going through the time that we have, it really does, we need to look after our own mental health. And of course, there's lots of fantastic opportunities out there to connect into services, whether it's the Black Dog Institute, whether it's Beyond Blue, or whether it's the Lifeline line that's been dedicated to the fire impact of the Shoalhaven through the New South Wales Health. I ask you to reach out and absolutely take control of your mental health and use whatever is available for you. Just on that, it was just this week that I was advised by the National Mental Health Coordinator that only 4% of the nation's packages, your 10 sessions with a counsellor that you can get through Medicare, have been taken up. They're really valuable pieces of time that you can spend if you're feeling that way inclined to really get some professional help. So if you need it, please take it. But I hope that you find this evening instructive, and that you hang in there with us over the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and come out the other side and ask your friends and share this video with your friends as part of our getting prepared for the fire season ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Just a few words about where we're meeting tonight. This is the Integrated Emergency Management Centre. Now, as ratepayers and residents of the Shoalhaven, you should rightly be proud of this. The next time you're in town in Nowra, drive down past 92 Albatross Road and you'll see the building on your left as you're driving towards the airbase. Inside this building is an integrated management centre incorporating the headquarters of the Rural Fire Service, the State Emergency Services, and the room that we're transmitting from right now during the fires and other emergencies. This is the Emergency Operations Centre for Council. And in the tables around this room, which you unfortunately can't see, but around us are arranged a number of tables which will include all sorts of government agencies, council, defence, land services, police, welfare agencies, city engineers. But this is not actually the scene of most of the action, believe it or not. Right next door is the area where all of the information that comes off the fire ground or the flood area gets synthesised across a great number of people, everything from weather analysts and people who observe the unfolding climate as it's happening, all the way through to those that manage the air assets, those that do the radio communications. And across the front wall of that particular facility are a number of screens where all of the information that gets synthesised from human resources on the ground, getting the intelligence and seeing where the danger and the problems are, all the way through to other reports received by members of the community, where all of that is synthesised and put into a neat parcel and then moved up the chain before it actually appears on the Fires Near Me app as one particular source, for example. On those screens are infrared tracers, Bureau of Meteorology, real-time news reports, because sometimes the media is in places a lot faster than we've been able to get information from the field. And it's an amazing thing to watch. And the reason it's so impressive for me is that after some 40 years in uniform, that is as high-tech and as capable and competent an emergency ops room as I've seen. And the people of Shoalhaven can be really proud of this investment because it is a council-owned facility and it was put here for the express purpose of responding to emergencies that we might experience from time to time. It came into its own in the last 9 months. It has drawn an awful lot of attention and positive comment from people who visit all other local government areas under some level of stress, and this place is probably one of the best that they've seen. Now, to that end, it's my duty tonight to represent the chair of the Local Emergency Management Committee, who's also the Chief Executive Officer of the Council, Mr. Stephen Dunshay, and he's asked me to relay a few things. First, Council works in partnership with emergency services, state and federal government agencies, charities and others to support the community through the recovery phase of impacts experienced from the most recent emergencies and to prepare us for emergencies in the future. Shoalhaven City Council, secondly, is part of the Local Emergency Management Committee. This committee is constituted under the State Emergency and Rescue Management Act of 1989 and is responsible for preparing plans for response and recovery from emergencies. Thirdly, the Shoalhaven City Council CEO, Mr. Dunshay, chairs this committee, and members of the committee include Police, Rural Fire Service, Fire and Rescue, SES, Surf Life Saving, Marine Rescue. Supporting agencies include Welfare, Health New South Wales, Ambulance, Transport for New South Wales and Department of Primary Industries. There are many different work areas within Council that aim to assist in the response and recovery from emergencies, and these are engineering services, communication services, transport services, and facilitating activation of the Emergency Operations Centre in which we're currently sitting right now. It's important to note that Council supports emergencies in a variety of ways, but are not the lead agency in combating emergencies. For that, we're about to hand over to two experts in that field, and it's with that note that I pass the microphone to Inspector Ray Steins. Ray is the Local Emergency Operations Controller. He's also the Chief of Police here in Nowra, and throughout all of the fire emergency, he's been effectively located in the office about six paces from where I'm currently sitting. Over to you, Ray.
Thanks, Vince. My name's Ray Steins. I'm the inspector at Nowra Police Station. I'm the officer in charge at that police station, and part of my role is to undertake the LEOCON role, or the Local Emergency Operations Controller. I share that position with another inspector, Dave Cochran, and between the two of us, we look after this room and the roles and responsibilities of the people that are within this room. In saying that, we refer to the people in this room as representatives of functional areas, and like Vince said, that includes the police, New South Wales Ambulance, and I'll just work my way around the room so I can jog my memory. Police, ambulance, welfare, New South Wales Fire Brigade and SES, communications, engineering, which is the council arm of the EOC, RMS, Roads and Maritime Services, the Marine, which includes surf life saving, marine rescue, defence, welfare, lands and animals, and environmental services. So you can see there's a number of agencies that form up the EOC, and my role is to ensure the coordination of their agencies in support of the combat agency. So if we put it into the bushfire context, the RFS and Mark is looking after the fire. We're supporting them to do what they need to do to stop the fire. So if they need to, the communication between both myself and Mark, well, we have known each other for a long, long time, and it makes it a lot easier. But the fact that the communication is a two-way street. So if Mark needs a hand with a certain aspect of the response to the fire, he'll just come and see me, and then I'll allocate it to a function area to undertake. And it can happen pretty much immediately. And Vince, you're 100% right. This facility that has been built is the envy of a lot of councils, a lot of LGAs. And I've had, since the fires were extinguished, I've had a number of councils come here and ask to be shown around the place because they want to replicate what we've got here. It's a testament to the RFS, to the council, for what they've provided. And thank you very much for that. My role primarily is to support Mark and the RFS. That's it in a nutshell. And we do it through an immense amount of cooperation and coordination. And without that cooperation and coordination, it just doesn't work. We were lucky enough that through the LEMC, there was a large amount of planning had gone into the Shoalhaven. And as soon as Mark gave me the phone call to say that we had a major fire happening, we opened up the EOC, and as soon as we opened up the EOC, we have agreed that every agency takes their hat off, and it's not agency specific. We all work together as a team. It doesn't work if we don't do it that way. And as soon as the doors open for the EOC, it goes into preparation and recovery mode. Recovery for the areas that have already been affected. If they've had power, Integral Energy or Endeavour, jump straight in and start repatriating the power. In relation to the preparation, we use the forecasters from the RFS to tell us where the fire's going, so then we can start preparing towns ready for possible impact. That preparation also includes a number of community meetings that we held prior to or during the event of last summer, and Mark was instrumental in all that with the information that he prepared and disseminated out to the community, and that, along with these type of webinars that we've been participating in today, I feel have been a great advantage to the community for that exact role. Apart from the EOC, the police response in relation to an emergency will always be the same. Regardless of what the emergency is, our creed is to protect life and property. And we make no apologies for the way it's done. If during a fire, Mark says the fire's going to impact on the highway at this point, it's up to us to decide where we need to block that highway, and we'll block it. The only reason we're blocking it by twofold is one is to protect life and property, and two is to protect the lives and enable the fireys to go and do their job that they need to do. I think that's about all, Vince, unless any other panel have got a question.
We'll get to questions in a moment.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Ray. And unfortunately, I got that out of sequence. It was supposed to be going to Mark Williams next, but actually, it's probably a better segue in the way it's just been done. Why? Because now Mark's going to get it down to a finer point of what it is we need to be preparing and how individuals can actually get themselves ready. And then on completion of Mark's presentation, we'll just have a quick wander and look at the Mayor's emergency kit before we actually get a little bit more into the detail of things that people can prepare. We're getting a few questions up and running now, which is great. Please don't hesitate to ask anything if there's something that you think we might be able to do. And to re-emphasise that this meeting is about trying to get as much information to you to put your mind at ease that there is system, there is process, and there are plans which have been drawn and have been considered. The Local Emergency Management Committee meets quarterly to make sure that those plans stay relevant. And as the emergency unpacks, and these fine folks from police and the first responders and the RFS leap and swing into action, we then just really need to be able to support them as best we can. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Mark Williams, and he'll be able to walk us through what actually looks and feels like the job and role of the zone manager and incident controller.
Thanks, Vince, and good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us tonight, and it's a pleasure to be here and be able to explain a little bit from the other side of the fence, and also get into some bones on how you can help yourself prior to any other future event that may happen. So last year, as Amanda said, we've seen unprecedented activity throughout the state with the bushfire disaster, and obviously the Shoalhaven was severely affected by that, tragically. Moving on from that, but we need to look forward, and we need to look at how we're going to combat future incidents and work out how individuals can assist themselves. Locally here, we've just talked ad nauseum about our local centre here. I too echo the status that we've got here. We are the apple of the eye of a lot of people around the state who are very envious of what we've got here locally. The ability for me as an incident controller or anyone in that position to be able to literally walk across a hallway and be able to engage yourself with the other support mechanisms through Ray's Emergency Management Committee is second to none. It's a literal 20-second stepping stone across, rather than having to talk off-site with another agency and the likes of that, which, as we all know, in an emergency situation, time is of the essence. So moving forward, what we've got here locally is we look after the entire Shoalhaven LGA here. The RFS within the district has 36 brigades locally. In rough numbers, it fluctuates a little bit. We're sitting at about 1,500 members across those 36 brigades. As a result of the recent fires, we've seen over 250 new applications, and we're currently working through getting all those people trained up and integrated within the brigades, ready to be able to respond. Obviously, COVID restrictions are having some effect on us as well. We have to make sure that we do it all safely, so that is taking a bit of extra time to get through, but we are, in effect, ready to go for the next emergency. And it's not just the big emergencies that the RFS does. We look after everything within the district, apart from the major townships of Nowra, Berry and Ulladulla, and we do anything fire-related or emergency-related that we're called on. So that's structure fires, motor vehicle accidents, garbage bins, light, cats up trees, you name it, whatever we get called to assist, we'll often respond, as I'm sure you all as locals out there would see the trucks out there and the crews out there. And those crews are all made up of volunteers, as I said, and they're all local members of the community. They're members of the community who are volunteering their time to assist other members of their community. So without them, we wouldn't have a service. I wouldn't have a job, that's for sure, and we wouldn't have the effective service that we provide to the community right across the board. But we are prepared. We've seen some significant rainfall in the last couple of weeks, which is, for myself as a firefighter, been fairly pleasing. Albeit that we got a little bit too much on both occasions. What it has seen is the fuel moisture content, or the soil moisture content, come up to saturation level, and that's going to see us going into an easing period coming into the new fire season, which starts on the 1st of September. Once we get into that fire season, it won't take long if the weather changes. If we don't end up into a La Nina, as what the Bureau of Meteorology is calling, things can dry out fairly smartly. So we are ahead of the game. We are constantly watching the weather. We're in constant hookups with the Bureau of Meteorology as to which way the season is looking at, and we're keeping ourselves prepared to go out and respond to those emergencies if need be. but more along, I guess now for how you can help yourselves and ultimately help us and all the other emergency services help you down the line. So, as we've mentioned in the previous webinars today, the one biggest thing that I can implore on everybody, and we implored on it during the fire season as well, is the Bushfire Survival Plan. Everybody in the Shoalhaven who lives within the Shoalhaven now should at least have known about this document, if not created one. And if you haven't created one, I really urge you, now is the time to start looking at this document and start at least understanding what's within the document and what we mean by a Bushfire Survival Plan. Things to consider within that survival plan is what you're going to do and how you're going to prepare your own property for defence of a fire, or for that matter, any other emergency that might come your way. Knowing the alert levels that the RFS uses. When we get a small fire or any fire, we put it on the websites, we put it out on Fires Near Me, and we advertise it that it's at advice level. And that's the initial stages of an incident. If a bushfire continues to grow and enlarge, you may see the warning level change to watch and act. And that means exactly what it says. It's time to start watching that incident, start listening to other media channels, start paying attention to Fires Near Me for updates, and start enacting your bushfire survival plan and start putting it at the front of your mind as to what you are going to do if it continues to develop in and around your area. Ultimately, if a fire gets to the stage where it's necessary, we'll move that warning up to emergency warning. With emergency warnings, we do often send out an emergency alert. Those emergency alerts can come out across mobile phones, they can come across into landlines, they may actually be delivered by firefighters or police or SES other crews in person across the board. What's direly important and what we continually try to get across to everybody is don't rely on those emergency alerts to let you know what to do. It is certainly a tool that we use. It is certainly a way that we get that message across, that it is not the be-all and end-all, and it is not a single source of truth. So therefore, we ask people to continue to monitor the RFS website, continue to monitor Fires Near Me, continue to listen to the ABC Illawarra locally here, where we'll do the updates of any emergency warnings or any warnings that go out, and you'll actually be kept abreast of the situation as it unfolds to the best of our ability. By relying on a single resource, if that single resource falls over, that then effectively means you may not get that warning. So please look at the big picture, try and expand your horizons about it, making sure you keep situationally aware from everything that I've just mentioned, but even looking out the window and looking at what's going on around yourself. In relation to whether you're going to stay and defend or leave, you would have heard us many times say if you're going to leave, leave early. What time is leave early? As soon as you start fearing that you are not in a safe location or you may not wish to be in that location, that's the time to start preparing to leave. And that may well be 2 or 3 days in advance of a fire getting into your local area. We will give you as much notice as we possibly can, but when those emergency alerts come out, and if it says shelter in place, that is not the time to decide that it is time to leave. So you need to make that decision early. Likewise, if you are going to choose to stay and defend your property, you must have your property prepared and you must be prepared yourself. There's a lot of things people can do to properly prepare their house, removing vegetation around your property itself, the structures, keeping your lawns mowed, making sure you have alternate sources of water available, many things that are available for you at any time by reading this document or contacting your local fire control centre or local brigade. So again, making yourself familiar with that is going to assist you in the long run. But the big thing about staying and defending is being mentally and physically prepared. What we see during these major events such as Currawong that we saw is absolutely horrific. It is not somewhere to be if you're not prepared. And that is a huge impact on people mentally. And if you're in any doubt, and a lot of the conversations we were having during the fire, if there was any doubt, our recommendation was to get out. So in closing, I would just like to say a huge thank you to everybody within the Shoalhaven for their attention during the last emergency, the attention to the police, the attention to all the emergency services, and especially those warnings, for people heeding that advice and making our job a lot safer when we get out there to try and do what we can do to help you. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mark. And what we're going to do now is a little bit offbeat, but we've asked the Mayor, and she was very happy to oblige, to bring in her own personal emergency kit. Mark spoke very, very broadly at a sort of a very strong preparatory level of what you can do to be ready and your planning and the like. What I thought would be a really good idea is to see a practical application of what that looks like, and who better than to show us than Mayor Amanda. Over to you.
Thanks, Vince. And look, I've got to reiterate what Mark was saying about the fire, your fire plan. And don't just talk about it in your household, talk about it with your neighbours. Because if you're living in a remote area and you've got maybe 5 or 6 neighbours, talking to your neighbours and sharing your plan could be the thing that saves your life if tragedy hits. But the other thing that you need to do is be prepared. I know it's a good Girl Scout, Boy Scout kind of position to be in. We talk about communications. This little beauty is a radio, and for some people, they don't know what a radio is, but for old schoolers like me, they know exactly what it is. Check the batteries. Make sure it works before you put it in your box. Or, even better still, grab some extra batteries, pop them in your box as well.
And what frequency, Amanda?
It's 97.3 ABC in the Illawarra on the FM station. It's around the 600s on the non-AM, on the AM. But check it out at 97.3. You're going to need a torch. You don't know how dark it's going to be when the fire clouds are overhead. Many of our people do. They really experience that firsthand. And having a torch, even something like this that has a little bit of a solar panel on it to recharge itself, my preference is my trusty old head torch. That's so great to be able to do other things. So head torch comes with me everywhere. In fact, most of the time it lives in my handbag. Passport, well, they're kind of obsolete at the moment, aren't they? But it's really good to have some ID. You can see poking out the top of mine is some cash. And you're going to need some cash because quite often comms go down. You can't use your card to pay for your fuel or to get some food. So make sure you put some cash in there. It's a little cunning kit too, so you might need to rate it a couple of times before you actually need it for the misadventures. Asthma puffer. If you're asthmatic, get your asthma puffer in there and your medications. Make sure you've got enough to last for, put 2 to 3 weeks in there because you don't know when you're going to be able to get back to your place. So, of course, a little bit of personal hygiene. I mean, obviously you can pack your toiletry bag, but if you put some new things in your box, then you know that you've got them and you don't have to worry about forgetting your toiletry bag. I love this little gadget. It goes in the cigarette lighter, one of those old school things in a car. I've got an old car. There's a couple of USB ports in there to charge your phone or any other gadget like your extra batteries whenever your car's running. The car is a great way to get some extra power on site. If you've got kids, remember to pack their little favourites as well. They want to have them in their hand, but a little favourite for a kid is always a good thing. And with comms out, maybe even a pack of cards, because you never know how long you're going to be stuck at the side of the road or anywhere. So it's just something to take your mind off what's going on. This little thing, I don't know if you've got one of these, but this is my little doodad to use the online banking. And I always lose it at home, but make sure you put it in your box whenever you're preparing to go away. First aid kit, and in these times, maybe some hand sanitizer, a face mask, and you didn't see me do that, and that's not a product placement, but some people really like to have a good cup of tea or a good cup of coffee. Put some bits in there that you appreciate so that you feel a bit better. But then the really important things. And these are the things that I would be absolutely lost without. So they're my mementos from my family. And if I left these behind, I'd be feeling pretty sad and wondering where they were. So make sure that they go in and they're, whoops, don't do that. But they're in a really, really good spot. Last of all, your hard drive. How many hundreds of thousands of photos have you got saved on something that you may lose? Put them on your hard drive, but also put your copies of your insurance, take photos of your other important documents. You can store them all on here so you've got access to them when you need them most. That's a really simple kit, and you'll have something else that you need to add in there. But it's really good to have on hand right near the door so that you can put it in the boot of your car if you need to go, if it's time to go. Or you can leave it in the boot of your car for a few weeks
because that's what it was like over the summer that we've just had with people who are in and out with their emergency kits. So they're pretty important. Pack one for yourself.
That's not an exhaustive list, but it's a really great example. And just a couple of things that the Mayor has in that emergency pack-up kit are things that have just clicked in my mind that, okay, maybe I've not given mine enough thought. But if we rewind a little bit, just a few moments to Mark Williams' presentation, that's what the plan is all about. And this is the sorts of thing that you ought to be discussing right now in cool nights or, lovely sunny days where there's no danger and no threat. Just sit down and have the conversation amongst your family and your neighbours and work out how you're going to keep in touch with all of them and make sure that everybody is on the same wavelength. Speaking of wavelength, we mentioned 97.3. ABC Illawarra is probably the most authoritative and accurate communication tool during any of these emergencies, whether it be fire or flood or heavy winds or storms. And the reason it's so accurate for us is because, unlike commercial stations, whenever they receive formal warning or official notification from authoritative sources that something needs to be done or announced, they are obliged under the Communications Act to transmit that firsthand immediately. So they don't have the commercial imperative to delay to when they've got a space in the transmission. They're obliged, and they do very beautifully relay the information quickly. So use that. Use the Shoalhaven website if you have access to the internet. Use the Shoalhaven Facebook page if you have access to that. But most importantly, the reason for the radio is because when we saw in the fires those things go down with the communications masts, the radio still worked. So with that, we'll just go to questions now. We've got about 15 minutes to 20 minutes to answer some questions. The first one is for the Mayor. So Amanda, do you have special powers in an emergency in our region?
There's some days when I wish that I had special powers, full stop. But in an emergency, all of the powers are handed over to the combat agency. So the special powers that I have are the powers of communication and trying to make sure that the messages are delivered as clearly as possible to the community within the Shoalhaven. Other than that, all other powers are put on hold because they're given over to the combat agency and to the police.
Thanks, Amanda. That question was from Daniel. Kylie has commented that it's very hard when there is only one road in and one road out, and we have no safe area to gather. So perhaps I might just ask Leocon to help us with that. And also attached to that is who declares an evacuation centre to open and who mans them, council or SES? So would you like to take that on, please, Ray?
Just in relation to the first part of the question for the one road in, one road out of towns, we obviously live in a beautiful place here in the Shoalhaven, and a lot of our towns are on the coastal fringe, and that necessitates for one road in, one road out as it stands at the moment. The best advice I can give to those residents of those coastal towns is listen to the warnings that the RFS put out and respond to those warnings as a matter of urgency. So if your plan is to leave and the warning is leave, consider leaving, and you don't feel safe, well, consider where you live as part of your plan, and the fact that you've got one road in, one road out. There's nothing more vital than that. If you need to leave, that's the time to leave. In relation to the second part of the question, the evacuation centres.
Who mans them, council or SES?
It's actually welfare agency that mans them. They will be activated after discussions with the combat agency and myself and numerous people within the EOC. And once it gets to an emergency warning and people are leaving their home, we will open up an evacuation centre manned by the welfare agency, and police will also be there to take records for disaster victim registration, where you supply your details so that we know who's left their homes and where they're going or if they're going to be housed at the evacuation centre.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, Ray.
Okay, the next question is, do we have water bombing aircraft at Hmas Albatross all year round? I can answer quite categorically, the answer to that is no. But does Albatross support allocated air assets? The answer to that is absolutely yes. So we had a pretty well little squadron of single-engined aircraft up there. Otherwise, they look a little bit like crop dusters, but they were able to refuel and turn around very quickly and support on the ground fire crews using their pontoons to scoop water up and do effectively a circuit of continuous firebombing. We also had a couple of piston engine machines, Cessnas, that were operated from a couple of places further north. And as president of the local aero club, I can vouch that we were providing those with aviation gasoline to be able to do their little part in fighting the fire as well. Can it take bigger machines? The problem with the bigger machines is that they are extremely heavy. Aircraft are given what's known, or aircraft weight is accepted by a runway depending on its load classification number. The load classification number of a runway is the bit that says that the runway can actually withstand the weight of something heavier. Now, big airliners and the like cannot actually operate out of Albatross with any sort of weight to them. We have on the odd occasions at air shows enjoyed things like a 767 or a 737 fly-in, but that's not something that could be sustained at a runway which is effectively built for light military aircraft. Have I missed anything there? To Mark, stand by.
Thanks, Vince. So, yeah, echoing what Vince says, the RFS has done a significant amount of work in conjunction with Hmas Albatross and the Australian military. We've got the airbase permanently set up at Albatross now, where we have the capability of not only reloading with fuel and water, but we also now have retardant tanks there. So that's the red dye-coloured stuff that you see come out of a lot of the firefighting aircraft. We've got the capability now of holding that in tanks there and loading that in. We do the large air tankers that the RFS uses, being the C-130 Hercules and the 737s, are capable and have been used in the last fire season working out of Albatross as well. And the ability that we've got that here locally means that their turnaround time, their normal turnaround time, where they used to have to go out to Richmond, just west of Sydney, and come back down, is effectively halved. So we get a very quick turnaround time, and we get that resource back over the fire in short succession, which is a great benefit to the local community. So a big thank you from myself to Hmas Albatross and Defence for their hosting us out there. They've always assisted wherever we've requested, whether it's been aviation assistance, parking aircraft overnight, through to even accommodating some of our firefighters during the last campaign. So we are held in very good stead with a great relationship between the both of us.
Don't give it up. I hope you can hear me. The question is any hazard reduction planned before the fire season? And given the amount of destruction already, are we in for a similar summer with fires in the Shoalhaven area?
Okay, good question. So our fire season, as I said, starts on the 1st of September. Crews have been busy planning and getting hazard reductions ready to go. Unfortunately, the East Coast lows and the other subsequent rainfall that we've had has prevented us from doing any burning in the months since the last fire season. But we do have a number of burns ready to go as soon as what we call that weather window opens to us. So as soon as the fuel moisture, so the leaves, the twigs and all of that sort of stuff on the forest floor that allows us to do this back burning, prescribed burning as we call it, dries out to the point where we can safely do it and effectively do it, we will be ready to go. Now, in saying that, it doesn't look like that's going to be likely at least for another few weeks yet, and it all depends on whether we get any further rainfall. So it is a constant monitoring situation, but we do have a number of those ready to go. In relation to the forecast weather conditions, I think I mentioned it or briefly touched on it. We are looking, the Bureau of Meteorology is looking at a La Nina event for the summer period around the Shoalhaven and the southern part of New South Wales. And what that will usually see and I am definitely not a meteorologist, but the information that I have is what we usually see out of a La Nina, and that is the opposite of an El Nino, is we get increased rainfall. So we could be up for a wetter than average summer, which will in turn not only assist us with keeping that fuel moisture up and not holding those fires, but it may also continue to prevent us from actually getting those prescribed burns actually done as well.
Thanks, Mark. The next question, I think, has two very distinct parts to it, although it's only one question. And for that, I've just put Amanda and Ray on notice. But the question is, what happens when you have a large elderly community who will not leave without SES or RFS door knocks?
Okay. So that's a really difficult question because we have to take responsibility as a broader community in making our elderly community understand that not every time that there's a disaster will there be a knock on the door. That knock on the door may not be from a uniform, but that knock on the door could be from a neighbour. So it really is up to us as neighbours and as communities to make sure that the older people within our community are cared for, that they understand the gravity of the situation, and that someone in our community takes responsibility, whether it's you in a street because you know that your neighbour is 94 and has mobility issues. You can do that. You can be that person, that welfare person, to make sure that that person knows what's going on. You can also ask that person who is their contact that you can make that phone call to and ask them to come and extract an elderly person and take them to their home elsewhere. So being really well networked in our communities is important. And if you don't know who the people are in your street, can I say that, maybe some of that street, it's more difficult with COVID, I know, but looking at how you can connect with people in your street gives you the opportunity to help out an elderly neighbour.
From the Leocon's perspective?
Yeah, just confirm it was...
The question was, what happens when you have a large elderly community who will not leave without SES or RFS door knocks?
In relation to elderly communities, they are one of our key priorities for the EOC as a vulnerable community. We work quite extensively throughout the year through the LEMC and in particular the health functional area to identify the nursing homes and the old person's home, for want of a better phrase. And they have unique contacts with those areas. And you might, Amanda's exactly right, you might not get a door knock from a policeman or a policewoman or an SES operative. It might be from a phone call from the health representative here in the EOC to the contact at the home to say, we need to get you out. And it's as simple as that. It could just be a phone call. If it's a neighbour, I 100% agree with Amanda. We have to look after each other. So if you do have an elderly neighbour and they need a hand, you can ring 000 and we will arrange a medevac if need be of that person to a safe area where they can be looked after. And that could be another hospital or another old person's home.
Thanks very much, Ray. Thank you also. I understand from the team manning the line here that there's an awful lot of great feedback coming back from the community and nice words. Thank you very much indeed for those that have taken the time to do that. We're approaching the end of the transmission, and there don't appear to be a great deal of questions left. But perhaps if we can do a bit of summing up. At the personal level, the things that I'm hearing tonight and what I've learned from listening to Amanda and what's in her emergency kit, and also from the planning aspects of it, is the big things are make sure we all listen to authoritative sources of information. So we've already said on numerous occasions, ABC Radio Illawarra being heard through a radio that is not dependent on power from the wall. and is not dependent on any sort of internet or digital connection is a really good place to start. We've also heard that if you've got any sort of medication requirements or potentially need ongoing supplies of medicines, it's a really smart thing to enter the season with sufficient stocks to be able to see you over for 1 or 2 weeks. Also important to have a little bit of money tucked away somewhere, and by that I mean cash. Please don't listen too much to the rumours of cashless society. The reality is when the power goes down or the comms links are down, FPOS machines and holes in the wall, ATMs, will not work. And so if you've got to stop somewhere to buy petrol or food or provisions, you need to have some cash in your as we say in the Navy, put some $20 in your sock for the cab. Get some really good familiarity going right now. It's actually quite fun to hook onto the Bureau of Meteorology website. Also, the ArcGIS is one that I enjoy, ARCGIS. That's a terrific website to have a look at where concentrations of heat are, and they've managed in terms of time lapsed since the heat was recorded. They're just good source of information along with fires near me. Make some arrangements to get your mobile phone charger and work out ways of charging that either by a separate power source or with the appropriate plug that you can plug into your car, or a USB port that can plug into a connection in your car. A torch. Other things that we had fed to us by a member of the public earlier for an earlier webinar was if you do have a generator, make sure it's high, and as in off the ground, and make sure you have extra fuel for it in case you need it. Things to have in your kit to take away, if you have such a thing at your fingertips, your wills, and anything that might assist you to set up somewhere else should you need to. So your passwords, your Service New South Wales and MyGov account details, a list of phone numbers, because if your phone goes down or the phone towers are down and your phone memory is in the cloud, you may lose all of your phone numbers. So have the ones that matter to you written down somewhere or at least memorised. Amanda spoke well about photos. Use the amenity of mass storage devices, or if you like me, still got millions of photo albums, buy a bigger car and put the photo albums in the back. Dog and cat animal leash. Lots of animals survived, but then the owners had nothing to tie them up with. That's pretty important. And if your animals do get away in the confusion of fire or smoke, they can actually make some unhappy times for wildlife. And on wildlife, I think there was one question there about did council support or does council support wildlife feeding and recovery after the fires? The answer to that is yes. There's a wonderful photo online of Mayor Amanda in the back of an MRH-90 helicopter delivering, I think it was 800 kilograms of various bits of sweet potatoes and food that the local fauna could survive on. So the answer to that is yes. We also have a terrific ranger network and environmental team at council who also are very focused on those very important aspects of recovery. You'll note that if you've seen the recovery web infographic, one of the factoids that we put on the front of that document was that this area lost 14,200 beehives. That mightn't sound significant, but when you're trying to repollinate forests and native vegetation, that's mostly done by bees and small birds. So it was a significant loss. That's about all we have. Oh, reading glasses, spare car keys, medical scripts, make sure you've got them with you. And there's all sorts of other good tips on here, which we might actually put these up in a separate list online after this transmission, and we'll put them up on the Shoalhaven City Council website so that you can just have a look down the list and say, well, that doesn't apply to me, or that does. Because there's a couple of rippers here, like pool noodles. They are very good flotation tools for folks who mightn't be the strongest swimmers. It's not the sort of thing that people would actually tuck away, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense. The other thing we'll put online is we spent a bit of time tonight talking about what this centre looks like. We've got a terrific bit of footage that was run by Brad, the RFS community liaison person here in December, before the fire peak actually occurred. And we showed it on the 2 live webinars this afternoon, and it was well received. And we'll put that on our website as well, so you can see what this place looks like when it's up and running. And again, this is all about building confidence in you, our ratepayers, residents, and townspeople, to know that whatever can be done is being done. We are focusing a great deal of energies on resilience and the future. We are also focusing a great deal of effort on making sure that our planning is as thorough as it can possibly be. We suffered a significant blow. 80% of 4,600 square kilometres was affected by the fires. That's a huge area. Nonetheless, it is survivable, and we will make sure that we can do whatever we can to survive in the future. That puts us up to about the closure of the Facebook live stream. Thank you very much indeed, Mayor Amanda, Ray and Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time out of what I know is already very hectic and busy days. And thank you to the team that have manned the lines behind the scenes, and to all who've helped us prepare for these webinars. And most importantly, thank you to you, members of our city, who have taken the time to listen to us and to be present and to support us. Thank you very much. I wish everybody a great night.
Do your plan.
Yeah, do your plan.